what happened to us from 2007 and then back to, this is as of the end of December. That big canyon there is the Great Recession, the asset value they had at the beginning of the recession. We are above that. We're about $1 billion above where we were when the recession began. We actually, if you look long-term, or I'm going to say short-term, what we call short-term, it's long-term for some other people. You look at the market for the next 2 to 5 years, there's a lot of money going to be made in the market in the next 2 to 5 years. U.S. economy, although it's stagnant right now, U.S. corporations are sitting on piles of cash. And the only reason the market is not taking off is because of the concern about the economy, somewhat politically generated and by the press. And so once there is a higher level of confidence, you will see jobs being added, I think, fairly rapidly, because these corporations have the ability right now to go out and create new jobs with the cash they have on hand. They do not need to go out and seek loans to do that. So we're setting on something that has the ability really to turn things around in the economy, and if the economy turns around, it's going to help PERSI. One of the questions that we always get asked is, what about the contribution rates that were proposed? And with the return that we had last year, the 20.7% return and our funded status of 90.2%, we were able to postpone the rate increases. We actually had a high enough return that we could have taken them completely off the table. The reason the board did not take them completely off the table is they acted on this in October when the volatility of the market was really unpredictable, and we weren't sure that the market wouldn't drop down, which would have meant that we would have had to put them back on. Now, it wouldn't have meant that we had to enact them. We simply would have had to put them back on to keep under the amortization period that's politically required. So we just bumped them out a year. So the contribution rates that I talked to you about last year that were to go into effect July 1st of this year have been postponed, and they're now postponed to go into effect July 1st of 2013. And if we can maintain the funded status that we have today, or get better, which I think we will, they can probably be postponed next year for another year and may be able to be taken off the table. So you don't have to worry about your paychecks going down July 1st or your take-home pay. This slide shows, as I mentioned, where we are exactly today. We're at 88.4% funded. We are one of the only systems that can actually, I can do daily valuations. I guess that's as of Friday. I did it this morning. That says 88.4. We're at 88.3 this morning. And now I want to talk a little bit about what we've done to turn the tide politically in the state of Idaho. When I stood here back in 2009, I was very concerned that there were a number of people who wanted to change PERSI and take it away from being a defined benefit plan and move it to be a DC plan. And I was really, at that point in time, trying to determine what I was going to do. And so I decided to take the show on the road. I decided to go out and talk to employers and legislators and meet them one-on-one in their communities and try to educate them about the value of this system, the value to the employees, the value to the state. And so in that summer, in the summer of 2009, I put over 4,000 miles on my vehicle. I traveled to all over the state. Met with, I think at that time I met with about 25 legislators face to face. And one of the things I did at that point is I tried to solidify our base. So I took the legislators who I knew were strong supporters of PERSI, and I went out and made sure they were strong supporters and they would stay strong supporters. I then tried to meet with some of what I will call adversarial legislators, and I only call them adversarial because they were the ones that thought maybe we needed to change to a DC plan, so that I could understand why they felt we needed to change. And that was very effective. And what I found from that is that in doing that, I created a relationship with them that they began to look at me as the expert on this. And so even though they continued to want to change the plan, they would call me to every meeting. And I would go in and say, while I really support what you're wanting to do, let me tell you some of the problems with it. And at that point in time, they realized that if they made a snap decision to change us to a DC plan, or they proposed one, that there were many obstacles to doing that and many shortcomings to retirees. So it stalled any legislation to change us to a DC plan. The following summer and spring, I went out and began to do much the same thing. I focused on employers because I wanted to make sure employers supported the plan, that they felt it was valuable to their employees. And I began to meet with more legislators. And if I heard a legislator was specifically planning to propose legislation to change the plan, I made it a point to go see them. And it was interesting because there were times that those legislators were very busy. They just didn't seem to have time for me. And through my persistence and the persistence of other legislators, I mean, there were times I would sit in a senator's office, he would call a fellow senator or a fellow representative and say, you need to make time to talk to Don Drum. And they would say, well, you know, I kind of learned the standard question was, when are you leaving Eastern Idaho? And I'd say, well, I'm going to stay as long as it takes to talk to you. And because if you told them you were leaving that night or the next day, they'd say, well, I don't have any open time. And so I was able to get in and talk to many, many of the legislators, especially the ones who came out and said they were going to propose new legislation. Many of those now are advocates of the plan. And the reason they are is because they now understand we are different. Idaho is different than most every other plan. I talked to them about their concerns. I talked to them about national issues. One of the key elements here was many of them were trying to design Idaho and make us look like Utah. Utah does not require employee contributions. That's why Utah was in trouble. We were able to take, we got all the Utah information that a Utah senator was traveling nationally and using to support that every system should change and be like Utah. We got all of his information and were able to take it and put our numbers right beside it and explain why it would not be in the best interest of Idaho to change to the Utah system. Now, he won't talk to me, but it worked.